Hey everybody, I want to talk about a product and platform that I absolutely love and our latest sponsor, Interseller, the prospecting and outreach platform of choice for recruiters and sellers. Whether you're doubling down on business development or recruiting talent, Interseller does all the heavy lifting of finding contact data, automating the email and follow-up process, and syncs all that rich data into 20 plus CRM and ATS platforms. Reach out now and get going on a 2-week free trial and let them know you heard about it from Adam on the Pozcast today. Check out the link on the website. Appreciate it.
Welcome to the Pozcast, where we introduce you to incredible humans who share their journeys with the mission to inspire you to harness your own inner tenacity to drive your life and career forward. And now, your host, Adam Posner.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Pozcast, where we're bringing the best and the brightest in the world of business, recruitment, and marketing to help you harness your own inner tenacity and drive your career forward. My guest today is Lacey Kaelani, currently founder of Metaintro and now a 2-time startup founder in the HR tech space. Metaintro is a professional resume wallet for Web3. It holds proof of employment, proof of skill, proof of education, replacing that old PDF resume that we all know and love. And Metaintro also hosts and maintains the largest Discord community dedicated to Web3 jobs. Around 4,000 of them are posted in the community a month, which is more than Indeed and LinkedIn combined. That's a crazy stat, and we'll get to it. And prior to founding Metaintro, Lacey co-founded Casting Depot, which is an exclusive community solely for talent and creators. And from her time working at places like Nickelodeon, Viacom, and A&E, she built Casting Depot to serve as a marketplace for all facets of the on-camera talent booking process. And now Lacey is using near blockchain and a whole bunch of other fun technology to dig into this space. We're going to unpack her journey and get into it. So let's do it. Lacey, welcome to the Pozcast.
Thank you for having me.
Well, awesome. And before we dig in, and thank you so much for joining us today from hopefully dry Los Angeles at this point. And again, a little memoriam for your garden. Sorry to hear about the casualty of losing some of your prized produce. So sorry about that one.
It's very sad.
And everyone out there. But before we jump in, quick, I have a special co-host today. He is the co-founder of Probably Nothing Talent and the host of the upcoming show, The Immutable Mindset. Kevin Logan Jr., welcome.
Thank you for having me as well. It's a pleasure to be here and a pleasure to be here with Lacey. I am so interested and curious about Metaintro and digging in with you.
Good stuff.
The
here.
resident DGen.
He is our resident. He totally is our resident DGen. So let's hit the rewind button here, Lacey. And before we get into the origin story of Metaintro and all this fun little Web3 stuff that we love to talk about, from our research, I read that you do have entrepreneurial parents and you kind of had this entrepreneurial upbringing. Let's talk about that a little bit. Where did that bug come from?
Yeah. Oh God, did you see that in the Untapped video?
I
hope it wasn't.
We go deep.
Yeah. For context, it was an investor summit, and I had to give a presentation. And I hate public speaking. To small audiences. Like there's stages, right? You have like, an intimate public speaking event, and then you have like a more massive, larger audience. And that's easier for me. But speaking to like 30 people in a room just gets me super nervous. And right before I went on stage, my investor was like, you need to have more context to what you're talking about. You need to fill 5-6 minutes. And I was like, I thought I was just getting up here to say hi. Nope. We raised X amount. See you later. I thought it was going to be short and simple. Instead, I had to give a whole presentation. And I was just like spitballing as I was going, which I'm also not very good at. I need to think about what I'm going to say before I say it. But yeah, so a little bit about my background. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs. Actually, everybody in my family is an entrepreneur. Aunts, uncles, cousins. You name it.
It's like a traveling circus.
Everybody. It is. Everybody has their own niche. And growing up, I never saw what it was like to work a 9-to-5. And, it was very natural in, I think, first grade when I started my first business, which was selling cool looking erasers to other first graders.
I think I remember that eraser business a bit. I had in middle school, I was on, we called it the pretzel squad, where I sold pretzels during lunch. And I would come up with deals like buy two, get the third one free and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of where I got that. But going back to your parents, may I ask, what did they do? What was it? What was their business?
So my mom had her own mortgage company, and she ran that. She still runs that today. And I think at the peak, she had about 50 people working for her. My dad owned a coffee shop growing up, which I worked at on the weekends for free. And my grandparents had a slew of businesses from bowling alleys to gas stations, you name it. So that was my example of what being in business for yourself looks like. Small businesses that still pay the rent, do really well in terms of revenue, and become staples of small communities.
That's awesome. Do you remember one of those early lessons learned, from watching them, from growing up around it?
I think for my dad's side, family works for free. That was probably the first lesson. It's okay to enlist your family members for free. And then on my mom's side, I think the toughest lesson, which I saw more so during the 08 crash, the downside of being an entrepreneur is you never know when your next paycheck is going to be, especially if you're not, let's say, like a venture-backed business.
Right.
More
if you have to eat what you kill. Right.
Yeah. And that was really tough during 08 because obviously being in the mortgage business is not a great business to be in when the real estate market is collapsing.
So how did you see your mom pull through? I mean, what were some of those? I mean, you had to see her like in those tough spots, in those rough times. I'm sure it was stressful, not knowing, where the next, payout was going to come from.
Totally. My mom's an innovator. She's one of those people that whenever you sit down to have breakfast with her or to have drinks with her, she'll lean over the table and she'll go, "So I have a business idea." And so, and my mom's that person too. Today we were having drinks 2 weeks ago, and 2 cocktails in, she's like, "Lacey, I have such a great idea for a business." Yeah. So, but that's how my mom's always been. And during 08, it was the same thing. Mortgage business is failing. What are 5 different businesses I could stand up tomorrow that will generate some revenue that will keep me afloat while my mortgage business comes back to life? And so
I was just going to say, I think that's kind of an attribute of all entrepreneurs and small business owners. I mean, I'm in the mindset where I don't have a backup plan for my core business and my core business strategy because I'm under the school of thought, meaning if I give any energy to anything else, I'm taking it away from my core effort there. However, you do need to be mindful of resources. And I think there's that key difference from that standpoint. So we could kind of glaze over a little bit of the university days and get into internships because I think that's something that's critically important, something that I like to talk about on this show. I've spoken about my internships and what they meant to me. And one of the biggest things that I always talk about for any young folks out there, it's almost more important that you learn what you don't like from an internship and apply that to your career versus what you do like. So I'd love if you could shed some light on a couple of those internships and how they paved the way for where we are today.
Yeah. Internships for any college student should be at the forefront of those formative years. Internships will allow you to look at what degree you're getting in a different way. It'll allow you, like you just said, to test out different avenues that you may or may not like. And it'll set you up for what could be your career. And so I had a ton of different internships that are definitely not listed on my LinkedIn. One,
tell us a good one. Tell us the one that you're not proud to put on there. For like the Colombian drug cartel. I mean, I interned for the,
I had good internships. I did intern for a guy who was building a startup that was redefining REITs. If anybody's in the real estate business and know how unsexy they are. I was a marketing intern and got fired, actually. I think I worked
fired
there
as an
for 2
intern.
months.
As an intern, what did you have to do to get fired?
You're doing bad.
Like, if assuming it was unpaid, how do you get fired as an intern?
It was unpaid. Why did I get fired? I think because I stopped showing up.
Well, that could do it.
That'll do it.
That is kind of the thing. You kind of just have to show up.
Yeah.
I think that's part of one of the job requirements. But going back to the ones that you loved and kind of led your way into casting, I mean, tell us a little bit where that started.
Yeah. So I was doing my undergraduate at USF, and I knew at that point, I was, probably, I think I was a sophomore. I was like, I have to get some internships I really like. And I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. And so I started applying to a bunch of internships that I was curious about in fields that I was curious about. And I had 2 interview opportunities that popped up. One to work in the casting department at the local TV station in San Francisco, and then one at Nickelodeon Animation in LA. And if I took the LA one, that meant that I'd have to take a semester off from school. And when they called me, the recruiter called me to give me the internship opportunity, I didn't even think twice. It was an opportunity to work on the shows and adjacent to the shows that I grew up loving, like SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, Tough Puppy. What 18-year-old doesn't want to work on the set of SpongeBob? So, 2 weeks later, I was down in Burbank and started my first real internship.
Do you remember what it was like? You were all excited to roll in to this job that you were thrilled about. You remember those first couple of days? What did it feel like?
Yes.
Were you scared? Were you excited?
It was like magic.
Magic.
It was magic. I mean, if anybody has an opportunity to work in animation, you should absolutely take it. It was one of those career paths that if all else failed, I'll go back to animation. You are literally working at a studio with a bunch of adults that love to draw and create for it.
Not a bad deal.
Not a bad deal. And you get paid for it.
And where did the casting side come into? Was that like a natural progression? Was it something that came from the internship?
It came from the internship. So it was a casting internship with the Nick Jr. department. And I had no idea at the time what casting was. No idea how I got the internship. I must have just proclaimed my love for SpongeBob so well. Yeah. I must have sounded very passionate in my interview. And the internship ended up teaching me a lot. I mean, now knowing what I know about casting is very much the fundamental pillar to any content that you consume that's scripted or unscripted. For instance, here, you cast me to be on the podcast, if you will.
I'll take it. We could work with that. We could work with that. Booking, casting.
You could be a casting director.
I've tried.
Yeah, well, recruiters... Have you?
I'm just saying. I mean, that's I was about to say, you're going down the path that we're talking about here. There's a logical correlation between casting and recruiting. You're looking for the best people to fill X, Y, and Z roles. So there's a lot of transferable skills from that standpoint. But what are some of those pillars of success in the world of casting? And we'll get to how those apply for recruitment.
Yeah, it depends on what kind of project you're working on. Talent I ended up in unscripted. So, and that's
the reality
more
shows?
Similar. Yeah. Reality shows. That's a nice way of saying reality TV.
Unscripted. Yes. This podcast is unscripted. Yep.
Yeah. For unscripted talent that's passionate, that, and again, it's dependent, but passionate, articulate, and can present well on camera. So, similar to recruiting, you want a passionate candidate, you want an articulate candidate, and you want somebody that's going to represent your company in a good way. And so over the course of my internships, I realized there was a void in the market, and that's eventually what led to my first startup.
So when we talk about casting, because I think it's important for people to understand and pull back the curtain, and I really don't have the opportunity to talk much with folks in this line of work, and it relates so closely to recruiting. But when you're evaluating talent, what are some of those, check downs, as we like to call them, in your head, those attributes that you're looking for, those questions that you're asking to really get to the heart of what somebody's about and ascertain both skill, aptitude, and attitude? Because that's what we do in recruiting. Kevin and I are recruiters by trade. You're in the business. We're looking to find the best available people in the shortest amount of time. Also knowing that everyone's stepping up is giving their A game, because that's what it's all about. And also the side note, which we talk about all the time, there's some people that absolutely crush interviews, that crush auditions. But when the rubber hits the road, you're like, shit, kind of faked it, and guess they made it.
It's an art. It's an art to be able to effectively hire. I think in casting, depending on the show I was working on, and I've worked for every major network at this point. So if I was working for Bravo, it would be like, will this person throw a drink in that person's face?
Do they have that inclination that they might just flip a table? They might just go a little ape shit.
Yeah. I worked on a show called Comic Book Men for a few seasons, if you're familiar with that show. And that show was, can this person effectively and in a very articulate way communicate that they are a super fan of Batman?
Interesting.
And so it just depends. But at the end of the day, the talent that you cast represents the network.
All right. So let's pause here. Let's do a new segment on the spot here. I'm going to make this one up. We're going to call it the Pozcast Role-Play here. And Lacey is going to be the casting agent. Kevin is going to be auditioning for a role in a reality TV show. We'll call it almost like one of those like Love Island show where they put the singles on the island there.
Nice.
What's one of these? What's a couple of questions that you would ask Kevin? Here we go. Take one. Action.
Action. Why are you single?
I haven't met a woman great enough for me.
I haven't met a woman as good as my wife.
A woman that could hold me down. My wife's not here.
Wife's not there. Okay. Okay. Why, if I were to ask your mom, why are you still single? What would she say?
First of all, if we could not talk to Cecilia, that would be great. Secondly, she would say I'm an amazing communicator.
Yeah. And that's why you're still single? Because you over communicate.
That's right. Under promise, over deliver. That's right.
And are you willing to go to an island, a remote island with a bunch of hot singles and find true love?
I mean, I'm watching enough Too Hot to Handle to know that I can do it. Thanks, wifey.
Right.
Thanks, wifey.
And are you willing to do it for free? Last question.
Okay, now that's the part where things get a little antsy. The thing about free is, are you going to pay for everything?
Everything but the flight.
They don't pay for flights?
You have to take off work for 3 months. It's the cost of finding love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's why that's why he had to go into recruiting, is to pay for these flights here. Yeah. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for hanging out for that new segment over there. And as we get back into the core over here, and it's kind of a pretty good transition here. And you said in an article about the Casting Depot quote, imagine being an HR professional without recruiting tools like Indeed or LinkedIn to source talent. That is the abbreviated frustration within the casting industry. Is this where the wheels started to turn into where we are now?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In terms of Metaintro or building that startup?
Building that startup.
Yeah. I was at a point in my career where I was taking on a ton of freelance projects, and I couldn't scale my business because I didn't have access to tools that would allow me to do my job better and faster. And walking to work one day, thought about all of these problems about how am I going to scale, and thought, what if there was a platform like LinkedIn where I can source all of my on-camera talent in one place and do my recruiting process beginning to end. And that was the light bulb moment.
And that was the birth of Casting Depot, right?
That was the birth of Casting Depot.
So talk us through those early days. And I'd love to ask founders, what was one of those early mistakes that you made that, as I like to say, is a good thing you learned it the hard way, that really set the tone for future growth?
Yeah, I feel like with Casting Depot, I ran head on straight into the wall with every mistake that you can make in the first-time founder journey. First-time founders, I like to say, are very dangerous in the sense where literally anything is achievable. You can do it if you put your mind to it, and you don't really listen to the market. You do what you think is best. And first-time founders, a lot of the time, despite anybody telling you, hey, you should be doing it this way, or hey, you should be giving customer feedback this way, you don't want to listen. You just want to do it the way that you think you should be doing it. And in startup world, like, yes, there's not one right way of doing something, but there are playbooks on how to
best
prove
practices
if something can work or not. Yeah. And so with Casting Depot, I ran into every single wall head on, despite what any investor told me, just because I thought it was the best way to accomplish something. And so for me with Casting Depot, fundraising was a really big issue. I think over the course of 18 months, I spoke to a few hundred investors and I couldn't raise capital. It was really tough to raise capital.
What was one of those core objections? I mean, what was the issue there?
Yeah, well, building marketplaces is a tough thing to do as a startup founder. You have chicken and the egg issues. What side is more important? And also with marketplaces, there are blueprints for success. And if you're not hitting those KPIs that show indicators of success, it's going to be very tough to raise capital from traditional consumer investors because there's a blueprint. And I fell into the hole of, I'm like, well, these 150 investors have no idea what they're talking about. I do. So I just need to keep talking to investors to find the right person that believes in me. And in hindsight, what I should have done is had conversations with 15, 20 investors, taken their feedback, and then iterated. I wasn't listening to the market.
Well, it's interesting too. I mean,
that's all to say we did raise capital though.
Right. And we'll get to the acquisition and the exit in a moment there, but you got to the point where you had the product. You felt in your gut, in your heart that you were solving a need in the market. This had to be right. Like that's the idea of a founder, of an entrepreneur, of an innovator. It's like, we found a need, we found a gap, and we're going to solve it. That's one thing. But to create a viable product that the market wants, to price it correctly, to find the right audience, that's a whole other ballgame. Mm-hmm. That's the tough part. Hey, everybody. First, I'd like to thank you all for spending time with me and my guest on the Pozcast. This show is my canvas to showcase amazing people from the world of recruiting, entrepreneurship, and leadership, and unpack their career journeys for everyone to learn from. But this show is also a business generator for me, as well as creating thought leadership and endless amazing content. And I've taken what I've learned in the past 3 years and over 200 recorded and 100 live shows and distilled it down into a digital playbook that I call the Poz Course. Now you could learn how I build, manage, and produce the Pozcast and use it to drive real business development and relationships. Today, I'm sharing all of my secrets behind the Pozcast, and you can get it all at thepozcourse.com. This course is for anyone, whether you're starting out or an advanced podcaster using it for B2B or B2C. It's filled with all of my insights, learnings, tips, tricks, and templates. So get it now at thepozcourse.com and learn all my secrets. Thanks. Talk to us a little bit about the mountain going, up and then down towards the road of acquisition and exit.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of founders don't talk about unsuccessful exit because it's very taboo in the startup space. It's like, we were still acquired, which is success, but it wasn't a successful exit.
In which terms? Like, how do you define success? Like financially?
Financially, mm-hmm. Yeah. Success is not only did I return my investors' capital, but they got a good chunk out of the acquisition. I ended up doing well financially, and our customers are going to be better off with this acquisition. And so what happened is we raised a little bit, we built, we went to market, we got customers, but it wasn't enough. And it wasn't enough to trigger the next round of capital. And so we were building out new features, which is also another mistake startup founders make, is the feature dilemma, which is, well,
Right.
if I build this feature, these customers will come. They never come. If they're not coming for your core product, they're never going to come.
No, it's not. If you think they build it and then they're going to come, that's a urban legend, right? It's a myth.
Yeah. Yeah. And we went out to try to raise, had investors that were going to lead the next round of capital. And I said to these investors, because you have a fiduciary duty to your shareholders to obviously be honest. And I said, I'm having trouble with scaling the product. I actually have a different idea. What if we focus the marketplace on a different segment? And after, $30,000 in legal fees and, months, 90 days spent on closing this round, I was operating our company as if we were going to close the round in terms of our monthly burn.
Right.
And the investors said, either you're building the business that you pitched us or we're not investing. And I said, we need to pivot. And they ended up pulling, which was super devastating. And I looked at my co-founder that day and said, what are we going to do? We're going to sell. We have to sell. We can't raise enough capital to be able to get to that next point in our business. And so sale process, also, no one teaches you how to sell a business.
Especially first time.
That's tough. Yeah. Especially first time. It's like, what do I say?
And most get fleeced if they don't have the right advisors and people around them, they're going to get fleeced. I mean, it's business. I mean, not to say everyone's looking to take advantage of you, but you're at a disadvantage for your lack of experience and knowledge. So how'd that feel at the end? Did you feel like you were a disappointment? Did you feel like a quitter, or were you like, you know what, this is going to be the fuel for the next phase?
I wish I could lie and say this gave me all of the motivation to build my next startup, but it definitely did not. There was like a solid month where I couldn't get out of bed. It was like, I've let down my customers, my team, my investors, myself. I set out to accomplish something really big and I couldn't achieve it. And that, as an entrepreneur, that's super devastating. And so I had an advisor who met with me on Mondays, who I love, and who was a really big help in the sale process. And he FaceTimed me and he was like, Lacey, you have to get out of bed. You literally have to get out of bed. Nobody's going to sell the company. You have to finish the story. And so got out of bed because he was really annoying about it. And we sat and built the roadmap to sell the business. And it took me a long time, but we found a buyer. So this was in the fall of 21. And we found a buyer in February of 2022. And the buyer was influencer marketplace that thought our product would be like a nice complementary feature to their current database. And
great. So all was not lost.
Yeah.
And at least it lives on from a product. That's awesome.
Lives on.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the idea for Metaintro came while you were in these final stages here. Let's jump into Metaintro and from the last 25 minutes, understanding and digging into Lacey's story, we could see where that theme is: the connecting, the understanding of bringing people to connecting talent and opportunity, because that's really what recruiting is all about. But walk us through the origin story of Metaintro.
Yeah. So I read one of Matt Ball's first essays on the metaverse. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to read that series of articles, but absolutely incredible. Matt Ball is like on a different planet.
Literally.
I love all of his podcasts, everything that he does. I'm a really big fan. But I read his first essay and I was like, oh, that's super interesting. What is Web3? I've been in crypto passively over the past few years, but nothing serious. And at the time, after reading that article, buying my first NFT, getting a little bit more serious,
dipping your toes
going
in
to
the
parties
water.
on Roblox. Yeah. I also had simultaneously been talking to a lot of my founder friends about what was going on and with Casting Depot, and they were all talking about their businesses and how they're pivoting into Web3. And so I thought about the technology. I thought a lot about where my expertise was at the time. And I said, is there anything that I wish I could have solved for in Casting Depot? Is there anything that, with this new technology, I can leverage to fix that problem? And with Metaintro, the genesis was, imagine looking at a candidate's resume and knowing for 100% fact that everything they say on that resume is true. Now, as a recruiter, your job isn't to vet that candidate. Your job is not to sit on a call with them for 30 minutes and get to know their past experience. Your job is to make sure there's a culture fit, and having a culture fit within a company can make or break that team. It's important, especially even more so in Web3, And so I said, well, could we use blockchain and NFT technology to reduce the time to hire? And the answer was yes. Just go and figure it out.
Interesting. I'm gonna toss this part of the combo over to, as I said, our resident DGen here, Kevin. I know he has some questions around. We're gonna lift up the hood.
Let's do it. Let's dive right in. Waste no time. So interestingly, Lacey, with even your description of kind of the start of Metaintro, I heard words like crypto, Web3, NFTs, blockchain, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the word Web3 and what its real definition is still really confusing to most people. So let's say you're at home with that mom that has a lot of ideas and she's leaned in and she's got an idea, but you lean back in with your own idea to explain what Web3 is. How do you explain what Web3 is to your mom?
To my mom, which I had to, and to my grandma, and to my dad, who's also foreign, and English is his third language. So I said, okay, how do I explain it? So I said to them, Web3 is the next iteration of the internet. It's user owned, and that to them was enough to have a very basic understanding. To them, I think in their heads, when I said that, they immediately saw Ready Player Me. They're like, oh, so I could physically go in. And I think that's also the beauty of explaining what Web3 is. Everybody has a little bit of a different iteration, a different dream of what it could be. But they know it's interactive and they understand that it's user owned.
That's we love Web3 for the same reason. That's absolutely ownership, right? And so, when I've heard Metaintro, the product described, it's a professional resume wallet for Web3. And then you think ownership and you think a wallet, right? And people may be misunderstanding what all that means. So can you also define for the people out there that may misunderstand what this all is, what a professional resume wallet is for Web3?
Yeah. So in Web3, depending on where you are in your journey, you most likely have a ton of on-chain credentials that live everywhere, whether that's your POAPs, your kudos, your layer 3 badges, your rabbit hole badges. They're all over the internet. You do not, as a user, have an efficient way of taking all of that data and then turning around and showing a hiring manager those on-chain credentials. And that's the missing gap right now that I see in what Metaintro is solving for. So the resume wallet looks exactly how you think it looks. It is a wallet, looks like MetaMask. The only difference is the layout is resume style. So you can organize all of your on-chain credentials in a way that recruiters can easily understand and intake in their current ATS system. So wallet, or let's say you go to a Lever or a Workday Greenhouse, you're filling out the job application, you get to the part where it says upload your PDF resume. Instead, because we're in Web3, you connect your resume wallet. And then it pops up into that recruiting manager's ATS system. They see all the on-chain credentials. Great. Let's move you on to the next stage of the interview process.
So what about verification of employment? Because that's a piece I've been having conversations with offline, and I think that's really the piece. And the way I kind of explain it is where I envision this is because you're not able to, as a recruiter, you can't ask somebody why they left the job unless they want to volunteer that information. You can't ask if they did get terminated, why they got terminated. But what you can verify is actual time in a role. And in most cases, I know some states are a little bit different, the actual title there. So where are we at in this process of using Web3 technology? Because there's definitely a gap. I mean, we're not even at the first at bat of the first inning, incorporating Web2 into saying, all right, Adam worked at American Express from 2011 to 2012. How the heck are we going to get there, and where are we at now?
Yeah, so we're building out two processes. First is the traditional authorizer would have to send the badge. So American Express would have to send that proof of in a badge. We have a badge minting process that will be live, so you'll be able to use that and to then send it into that individual's wallet. Examples of companies, organizations that already do this, MIT, they issue all of their diplomas on chain.
Oh, wow.
And they are sent to that individual's address. So this process exists. It's just
right. There's a use case already.
We're slow moving turtles. Yeah.
But what's
the second way? Oh,
sorry. Go for it.
Yeah. Quick second way, what we're building out, which we raised capital for, is to KYC your resume. So exactly how you'd KYC your identity, you'll go through a KYC process for your resume.
And what's KYC for anyone out there who doesn't know that acronym?
Know your customers, right?
Right? That's correct.
Yes.
I said that so commonly.
Pop quiz, hotshot.
Yeah. So essentially, it's an onboarding it's an onboarding process to verify your identity. So,
but my
question
is,
we just replicate the KYC process?
Right. So there has to be some. I mean, I envision it being almost an automated way in the future where companies are going to have on-chain databases of like Adam worked here at this stage, so it's all automated, and they're not going to have to utilize internal resources. Because that's where I see it. I'm not getting too much into these, where a stumbling block, where it's almost like background checks or reference checks, where I'm in HR and I'm getting a call from a future employer versus it being automated. And now I'm waiting for somebody to hit the verify, and it's a company that doesn't really understand it. But I want to get back into the Web3 roles, and Kevin and I were talking about this offline. Like, listen, we're definitely in a bear market, but in our opinion, the bears are building. What are you seeing out there? What are the type of jobs? What are those type of skills that are really in demand right now? What companies are hiring? Well, people can see what the names of the companies hiring by going on Metaintro, but the types of companies, where are you seeing the success right now, or the growth?
Yeah, it's been a tough 60 days in the Web3 market, as I'm sure you both have seen. A lot of companies, a ton of layoffs, a lot of slowed job postings, but that's also because we went into the holidays, and it's tough for me to give a sentiment of the market for this year, given that we're only 2 weeks in. But I still see a lot of companies that are hiring. A lot of them are infrastructure tools. I think if you had asked me last year, what companies are hiring, I would have said infrastructure companies, L1s, L2s, and NFT projects, DAO projects. Right now, if you were to go into the Metaintro Discord, it's 3% NFT projects, DGEM projects, and the rest are legitimate large companies. So companies like Binance are obviously hiring. I saw Super Rare is hiring. If you hop into the Discord, there's a ton, but market isn't as great as it was a few months ago.
Well, they do always say whenever there's a bear market, there's always a bull market somewhere. So it's definitely just finding those places. And before deciding to have this awesome chat with you, I've been a fan of Metaintro and what you guys have been doing and been following along for a while. I've been in the Discords, and one of the great things that you guys do. Oh yes. Resident DGen, it's true. No lies there. But one of the things that I think you guys do really well on your socials and your Discord and just helping the community along is, if I'm a job seeker looking to crack into the Web3 space, where do I start? So I'm curious, where do I start if I'm a Web3 job seeker?
What kind of job seeker are you? Are you a technical or non-technical job seeker?
Good question.
Oh, good one. Let's go with let's give the non-technical people some love.
Because I think to that point, I think technical is where the almost logical progression is, right? Because there's a lot more kind of, for lack of a better word, nerdery or enthusiasm in this space.
I'm a nerd.
Yeah. Yeah, we were yesterday with my head of growth. We were looking at some of the developer reports that came out in December, and something super interesting. I think it was CoinDesk that came out with the graph of developer commits to the price in the market. Developer commits like this, even through the bear. And then, the price going like this. So that definitely has something to say about the builders in the market. In terms of non-technical opportunities, the first thing I would say is, what does your Web2 resume look like? Because with Web3, in my opinion, a majority of the jobs that are posted are the same. It's just the context of the company you're working for is different.
Yep.
Social media to social media, Web2 to Web3, it's the same. It's just the nuances are a little bit different. The vocabulary is a little bit different, and the company is different. The mission of the company is different. So first thing I would say to a newbie, non-technical, is, what does your Web2 resume look like? And then help you figure out, what your path is in Web3.
As I mentioned before, I mean, this is we both live in the same world. We're recruiting on different on different kind of models here. I think so many companies are trying to put Web3 in their name, in their title, but they're really Web 2.5, and especially from a hiring perspective. You just hit the nail on the head, Lacey. These are Web 2 skills. Aside from those, really, it's Web 2 skills with Web 3 knowledge, attitude, and aptitude. Really understanding where it's going, but it's built on these foundations, and we haven't truly fully, most places gone all full Web3 yet from a skills perspective. So we're getting there. Where like when you talk to your clients, what are their big challenges with hiring folks in Web3? Are they asking too much? Are they looking for somebody with 7 years of Discord management experience? Like, where's the disconnect?
Yeah, I think there's two big disconnects. First, expectations. It is our duty as I get on my high horse to say this.
This is the high horse show. Get on it. I'm usually riding it, so you can take the reins, Lacey.
I think it's our duty as foundational Web3 companies, being in this first wave of the Web3 ecosystem. It is our job to, I don't want to say lower the barrier, but make the entry for individuals easier into the Web3 space. And when you're posting job descriptions that require 5, 7, 10, the crazy ones that say like 10 years of experience, someone needs to fire that recruiter. But when you're posting these jobs that have such a high barrier to entry to apply, you're limiting your pool of candidates. And I totally understand you need a great rock star founding team. But the larger companies, what they should be focusing their efforts, their recruiting efforts, or their onboarding process to, is creating good educational onboarding programs. So for instance, Unstoppable Domains, they will take any type of candidate, Web 2, Web 3, doesn't matter. They pride themselves in their recruiting process with education. So they have a whole onboarding process where they educate you on Web 3 for 3 weeks. And that allows them to source great candidates. Yeah, I think it's great. And I think more companies should be doing that. Because you can't be screaming at the market that there's not enough talent, but you're not giving the right opportunities and you're not building the right infrastructure within your company to be able to support that. So that's just my opinion. And then second issue within the recruiting process is validation of the resume. How do you know this? There's so much scam and FUD that happens in this market, especially on the developer side. The amount of horror, I'm sure you've heard the horror stories of I hired this Solidity developer. Turns out they don't even know how to write a smart contract.
They paid someone to do the code for them, right? Or they were just stealing off of someone's GitHub.
It's a problem.
No,
and hopefully Resume Wallets will solve that.
And talk to us about your model. How's your model different, and how is it unique to Web3 as far as the way the job boards and the placements are handled?
Yeah, so most people online know us for our Discord community. We have no intention to build out a job board. The Discord community was really created just for a place for individuals to live while we built on the side and built out our core product, which is the resume wallet. We have no plans of building out a job board, no plans of building out an ETS system, a marketplace. I've done it before. I know how capital intensive it is. It's not really, if I was to build a product in, the Web3 space, it wouldn't be a job board. There's other people that can do that much better than me. But our Discord has turned into a job board. So if you're in it, you can see that there's a ton of channels with, dozens of jobs to apply. That's really what people go there for, but that's not our core product.
And how you monetizing that?
We don't. I don't believe in the traditional recruitment model where companies pay me to then get candidates or vice versa. I think that's a very Web2 way of thinking. And yes, there's a ton of love and time and attention that goes into the Discord, but I don't believe in gating the jobs with a paywall. So my investors smack me for that.
I was about to say. So where does what's the revenue generating portion of the business?
So we're still tossing around some ideas. Yeah, we're tossing around some ideas with how we're going to monetize the wallet. First being the minting process. So if you choose to use us to mint badges to then send into wallets, there will be a super nominal fee. We're building on Polygon and Near, and the transaction is nothing. And so we're thinking that the fees attached to minting those badges will just be really, really small, but we want to make something off the top. And then second, what we're tossing around with customization of the wallets. Similar to every single candidate's resume, you're going to want a way for your wallet to stand out. And especially when there's millions of people one day, hopefully using this wallet, you want your resume to stand, or you want your wallet to stand out. So are there tools and features that you can unlock if you pay for to customize a wallet? Probably. And then third way is on the recruiter side. So similar to HubSpot, there will probably be a usage model where you can get your first 1,000 applicants for free, 2,000 applicants, you have to pay a fee, etc.
So top of funnel. Kevin, before I bring it home here, any other questions, Web3 specific you want to get into?
One general curiosity in doing the research and everything, and it kind of ties into what we were just talking about, you utilizing Near and Polygon as your platform, and and talking about the monetization and in terms of creating the best, I guess, kind of UI UX experience for the end user. Curious how you went about thinking about which blockchain to actually utilize, thinking about interoperability and the ability for everything to function in a interactive and immersive way. Just curious, if it was the fees and that kind of guided that, or what was it that guided that thought process?
I'll give you my
we don't want politically
fluff
correct
answer.
Here.
Yeah, I'll give you my fluff answer and then the honest answer. Fluff answer, but honest, the fees. That is a massive piece of the consideration. And then secondly, when we went out to build, we said, well, we should be building on a chain that has a grant foundation, that'll pay us to build, because the idea is that we're one day bringing millions of people to this chain,
onboarding,
and that should come with a fee. So we shopped around the wallet, the grant proposal to a few different chains, and Near hopped on it really quickly. We closed that grant round in about 3 weeks, I'd say, and they gave us a really a considerable amount to build. So, and then Polygon naturally came just because Polygon's a great chain to also be building on.
Indeed. And one last thread to pull on, because it kind of ties into something you brought up earlier in our conversation in terms of, in terms of, Lord, I've lost my words. In terms of looking to get investors for your product. You talked about going through kind of the traditional route before. And then this time you guys went through Republic, the platform where you kind of crowdsource the investments. So curious how, your past experience going through the traditional route informed you going this way. And then was there, because Republic's kind of in the Web3 sphere, did that make that an easier decision for you?
Yeah. So misconception about the Republic round. There was an investor. What would I label them as? An investment recommendation publication, if you will, that makes investment recommendations to a group of high net worth individuals. And the round sizes that they do as a group is about 5 million. And so they found us through Republic, reached out to us. We went through the diligence process exactly how you would through an investment fund. They said, yes, they wanted to invest, but because of the size of the checks that this group can invest in, it could be as low as $100, as high as, $500,000. Because of SEC regulations, they had to invest through a Reg CF, which is Republic. And so it technically wasn't open for the public to invest in. It was I think it was considered unlisted, but they ended up putting in the whole 5 million, which was amazing. So I'll say we ended up raising 3 rounds of capital over the course of 4 months or so, which was nuts. We raised our grants round, which was a little over 100. We raised another 500 in June, and then July, and then closed the seed round in September. So
awesome.
It was busy.
Fantastic. Lacey, it's great to see. I mean, we're speaking the same language. We're all looking to move the chains forward, to onboard, to make it more accessible, to break down the walls here. But obviously, we know there's a lot of bad actors out there, a lot of bad press, a lot of bad PR. What do you think the biggest threat to the entire Web3 ecosystem is right now?
Crazy people.
The SBFs of the world.
Yeah. Crazy people.
I think we're trying to excise out of this process.
Yeah. We need more security. Keep those people out.
Absolutely love it. Lacey, we love what you're building there. We're big fans of it. So let's bring it home here. A couple of questions that I ask every guest, because again, this is my masterclass. 250 plus episodes. I get to speak with incredible folks like yourself. Lacey, what's the single greatest piece of advice you've ever received that you take action on every day?
Single piece of advice, everything's temporary. Mom taught me that. Take that with a grain of salt and how you look at life, things that are, your roadblockers, reminding yourself that everything's temporary.
Totally dig it. And last but not least, you look back on those tough times. You look back, if at that moment when you're like, shit, this failed. Casting Depot I let people down, I let myself down, I let investors down. But then you clawed your way back up from that hole. And you look back on that time when you had to dig down deep and harness that inner tenacity to pull you up. And now where you're sitting, fantastic product, raising funds, building the future of Web3. Lacey, what keeps you focused? What is your beacon? What is your North Star in life?
Building cool shit. I think that's probably what keeps me going. Yeah.
I love it. That's good stuff.
I love that.
Kevin, thank you for being my co-host today. Lacey, I want to thank you so much for joining me. And I want everyone to check out more Metaintro at metaintro.com. Lacey, where else could folks find you? Where could they connect with you? Where could they learn more?
Yeah, we're on Twitter. TikTok is popping, YouTube, Twitch, LinkedIn, all /Metaintro. You can find us on there. And our Discord is like GG/Metaintro.
Awesome. Hang with me one moment here as we wrap it up. Everyone listening at home, I hope you learned something. If you did, please share it, because sharing means caring. It goes a long way. That's how we're going to move things forward here in Web3, the abundancy model, collab over compete. Remember, take care of each other. Look out for one another. You can find out more at thepozcast.com and catch us next week for another great episode. Take care, everybody.
Wisdom is forever, but for us, it's time to go. Thank you for joining us. Luckily, we'll be back with our next episode soon, jam-packed with more incredible humans. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and sharing. To join the conversation, search the Pozcast on LinkedIn. And to catch up on past episodes and more info, please visit www.thepozcast.com.